If you haven't been following the recent developments between Armenia and Azerbaijan, I know there's a lot to take in. For the average Angelino, it's probably confusing to see all of these protests and the roads blocked and what is going on. We're in the middle of a global pandemic, massive layoffs, unemployment, an important presidential race coming up, in the middle of a social injustice movement, and now this, a war that's raging 7,000 miles away. But you see, for the local Armenian American community here, this is of the utmost importance. There is a humanitarian crisis going on halfway around the world, they say. You see, I came to this country in 1990 with my family. The Soviet Union was collapsing and tension was brewing in Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh. And 30 years later, here we are again. Here's a little background, a little history, and highlights of everything that's happened this week. The temporary ceasefire brokered by Russia between Armenia and Azerbaijan barely lasted an hour. On Monday, local leaders came out and condemned Azerbaijan.
The military forces of Azerbaijan launched an unprovoked, brutal military attack with the full support of the dictator of Turkey. And it included the infusion of over 1,000 jihadist, mercenary terrorists.
While international media is reporting Turkey is helping Azerbaijan, the local Turkish consulate is denying its involvement, while France, Syria, and Iran say it's true. One local with ties to Azerbaijan agrees that there needs to be U.S. intervention.
U.S. is involved in places that they have no business to be involved. But in here, they have a military base in Azerbaijan. They have interest in Azerbaijan. They have interest in Armenia.
Artsakh is the issue at the heart of this conflict. Armenia and Azerbaijan were part of the Soviet Union. Though this region is ethnically Armenian, Stalin made it a part of the Azerbaijani Soviet Republic. When the Soviet Union collapsed in the early 90s, war broke out when Armenians in the region declared independence from Azerbaijan. There was a heavy loss of life on both sides. Tens of thousands were killed and more than 1 million people were displaced. That vote for independence in Artsakh during the fall of the Soviet Union sparked the conflict. And despite that vote, the region is recognized by the United Nations as part of Azerbaijan. We spoke to a USC researcher about the history just a few days ago.
This conflict could have gone in one way, and it's now going in a different way. It could have gone towards a resolution, but now it's going to a dead end.
Armenians say they fear this war is an existential threat.
The echoes of the past and of genocide is something just like for Jews, just like for many groups around the world. I don't care who you are, I don't care what your religion is, we should stand up against, demand peace.
And this is why protesters have taken to the streets, organizing massive demonstrations on the streets and freeways of Los Angeles and around the country. Armenia's prime minister has said he's ready to have talks with Azerbaijan to stop the fighting. But Azerbaijan's government says there have been talks for 30 years with no resolution. Azerbaijan's president says a military solution is the only way to take its lands back. Armenia says it will retaliate to all Azeri attacks in order to protect its citizens.
The area has been evacuated.
150,000 people in Artsakh and about 3 million people in Armenia are facing death on so many levels because of a decision made by a man recognized as a criminal and a dictator. Everyone is hopeful that this is a conflict that will no longer be inherited to other generations. One of the most important pages of Armenian history is just being written right now.
Time is of the essence. These massive protests and marches will go on until the international community steps in and puts a stop to what's happening halfway around the world. Araxi Karapetian, Fox 11 News.
A local surgeon in the middle of a war zone saving countless lives on the front lines in Artsakh. Dr. Armen Hagopjanyan performed countless surgeries as bombs were going off all around him.
Without question, this was the most difficult thing that he's ever experienced in his life. To complicate matters, not only did he go over there to help, but he contracted COVID while he was there. He has since recovered. He's now back in the U.S., back in Los Angeles, and just days since his return, that very hospital where he spent his time was bombed by Azerbaijan.
Azerbaijani missiles target a civilian hospital in Artsakh. At that moment, being interviewed by Vice News was Dr. Armen Hagopjanyan.
Actually, okay, all right.
This is a reality. Usually we get a little siren, so we know we need to go into the bunker. But sometimes siren doesn't work, so we get the bomb before the siren. But it's okay. We're getting used to it.
His decision to go into a war zone, he says, was actually an easy one to make once he realized just how serious the situation was.
There is no life when you cannot sleep. There is no life when you can come out from the bunker. There is no life when your kids are scared, when your wives are scared, when your mothers are scared. There's no quality of life. There's no food. There's no water. There's nothing.
Nothing but fear. Since his return, that very hospital was hit, and this time, a portion of the building severely damaged.
You should have seen the faces of all those nurses and all those middle medical personnel in the hospital that stayed. Every single one of them had either a brother, a husband, or a son at the front line.
Working under such dire conditions was beyond challenging. But Dr. Hagopjanyan says they did what they could. They did what they had to.
Most of the time we had two patients at the same time in one operating room. So if you would be squirting some fluid over the wound, you were running a risk of getting some blood from one patient into the other operating field. We did not have time to care. We have to save lives.
They worked around the clock, non-stop surgeries. He lost count of how many lives he saved.
Human body has amazing ability to adjust, and we adjusted to the lack of sleep, we adjusted to the lack of food, we adjusted to the lack of water, we adjusted to the lack of sunlight.
Dr. Hagopjanyan says as doctors, they suffer from PTSD.
Because no matter how hard you try to separate yourself from the patient, it was impossible not to get attached to all these 22-year-old kids whose life was completely reversed from that point on.
He says he can't believe the inhumanity, the sheer irresponsibility of those in power. He says he's in disbelief that the world continues to ignore what's happening.
Some idiots that came to power that do not care about human life. It's impossible to listen to this from the human perspective. They don't consider human lives as their own. They don't care. For them, it's just the statistics. Well, how many lives do we need to get rid of to satisfy ambitions of Erdogan or Aliyev? You can be brave all you want, but if you stand in the middle of the field and there are 50 drones flying over your head and 20 of them blowing your head off, then there's nothing you can do. We are not fighting the war of the Titans. We're not fighting the war of good versus evil. We're fighting the Xbox wars when kids sitting somewhere 100 miles away from the field are using joysticks to kill people. And you don't get a second life when you get killed.
A local woman says she felt her heart guiding her to leave Los Angeles and move to Armenia. So she did it with her dog, Coco, right before the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan began.
Now she's putting her teaching credentials to use helping the children impacted by this war. And Coco is busy serving as a therapy dog, snuggling with the injured Armenian soldiers.
Go. Sirun go.
Coco, I believe, is Armenia's first therapy dog.
What are you doing?
And we are so happy to be here with him. At first, the idea was strange, but this clinic was so welcoming because Coco has done a lot of therapy work in the U.S.
The soldiers have also welcomed Coco. They quickly fell in love.
Since Coco's been here, it's transformed the hospital, I think. The soldiers get so happy when we come, the nurses, the doctors. It's created this new atmosphere.
Nanor Balabanyan left behind her life in the States, an incredible, well-paying opportunity, and moved to Armenia the day before the war started. Her background is education, so she started a daycare for the children, trying to give them a sense of normalcy. On the side, she's busy working at the hospital, bringing books to the soldiers.
One of our most intelligent guys. That's right.
Bringing them the joy of music and getting them involved in art therapy.
We have a French guy who painted these paintings, half of them, and the soldiers are supposed to finish the other half. We just try to find ways to get their mind off of the pain because it's a lot of pain.
What kind of injuries are you seeing?
It's mostly legs and arms and some hand. So let's see who you can talk to. Some of them are really funny.
Hi.
Hi. I had a chance to speak with a couple of the soldiers. Avadis is 27 years old, married, a father of a 2-year-old girl. He's recovering from surgery on his right leg. Avadis says he's aware of the support from the Armenian American community here in Los Angeles. He says the encouragement gives him strength.
You feel a sense of pride when you see the images. The entire Armenian world is united and standing with you. You don't feel so alone.
I asked him if that's him in the drawing. He says it appears to be.
He just finished it. It's beautiful.
Coco is around the whole time. Some soldiers are more fond of dogs than others.
If they don't bite, I'm good.
Vahan is another soldier recovering from surgery. He's 46 years old. Back in the early 90s, he participated in this same war. He talked about how things are different this time around.
Before it was automatic weaponry. Now it is a serious technology war. With a computer that can do more damage than 1,000 men.
Nanor says she hasn't had second thoughts about her decision to move to Armenia. She says in her heart, she knows this is where she needs to be, doing what she can.
And she is working on educational enrichment opportunities for the children affected by this war. There are classes based in STEM. This is in collaboration with an NGO, which she started 10 years ago. And on Instagram, there is a handle. It's called Books for Armenian Soldiers. You can go there and you can also donate books and art supplies as well.
And there's a reason why.